Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk everything animation here, including Incredibles 2, which we'll be getting into right now. I'm Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Beatriz Mourad.
Hi.
And Alex Bonilla.
Hola.
Yes, tonight we're talking Incredibles 2, our reactions podcast. The movie just came out tonight. We're recording this Thursday night. We just saw it. I literally just got out of the theater. Beatriz and Alex, I think, have had a little bit to sit on it. And we'll be giving you our initial takes and thoughts on this huge Pixar animation release. We'll also have a recap podcast up later this weekend that Beatriz is hosting that'll go into more detail. But if you just want some initial takes here on what we thought of the movie, we'll start off in no spoilers, and then when I say so, we'll get into some more spoiler sections. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can listen to our non-spoiler takes, but tune out once I say so a little bit later in the podcast. Check out overlyanimated.com for everything animation. We talk animated movies. Beatriz does a lot of that stuff, and you can subscribe, make sure not miss any of our future podcasts, including our Incredibles 2 recap. So yeah, let's get into things. We're fresh takes here. So let's give some brief non-spoiler takes. Alex, why don't you start off? What did you think of Incredibles 2?
I loved it. Like I think it's almost a perfect follow-up to the first Incredibles. I think it does a very similar thing to the first movie, where it follows these very classic tropes, but it somehow manages to do it in a way that's very fun to watch. And also, like, it has really great action sequences, but it also does really well when it decides to be quiet too. Like, especially in the scenes that are focused on Mr. Incredible, like at home. Those scenes that I really enjoyed, similar to like the quiet scenes that are the first half of the original film. Also, I think that giving more focus to Elastigirl helps a lot. Violet is still incredible in this movie. Like, she gets a good side arc to deal with. I even think Dash is better in this movie than he was in the first one. Like, I feel like they make him less annoying, but still keep his character. So I enjoyed this movie's usage of Dash there. And so like the main cast, which is who I went to watch the movie for, they all continue to be awesome, just as they were in the first movie. So I found this a very enjoyable experience from beginning to end. And I've seen people say that it doesn't measure up to the first film, but I think that there is an argument for this to be somehow better than the first movie, I think.
Wow, strong takes from Alex to start off. I love it. Perfect follow-up, he says. And I really agree on the Dash stuff. I thought he was like a delight this movie. I didn't even like him that much in the first one. So that's a good take too. Beatriz, what are your initial thoughts on Incredibles 2?
You know, it's a shame that this isn't like a video type of thing, because the face I made when Alex said that, the face I made when he said that this may be a better film, like, no.
Was it one of disgust or one of surprise?
No, it's a disgust. It's a shame.
Wow.
Shots
face.
fired.
No, this is The Incredible. Like, it's unfair to compare the two because The Incredibles is such a perfect movie on its own. So I came into this, trying to lower my expectations. Again, it's been 14 years, which is like a long wait.
As they reminded us in the beginning of the movie. Yeah.
Yes. And yes, as they reminded us. And it really shows you who they know, the audience, like they know who's watching this movie. They know that it's not really kids that are going to see this movie. It's the people who've been waiting 14 years for it.
I think kids are seeing the movie too. But
no, totally. There were kids in the theater too, but it was like there were so many.
On our opening night ones, there was a lot of adults.
There were so many people shushing the kids. They're like, "Be quiet," because they were like, "No, this cannot be ruined for us." But yeah, I definitely, like, my heart swelled when I heard like the ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da, like the theme song happen, and I was like, we're back. And the film does a great job continuing the story. It doesn't measure up to the first one. It doesn't. It's just so visually breathtaking to look at. Like, especially seeing, like, even from like Inside Out to now, because this is a human-centric story. This isn't like cute characters or a very stylized kind of art form. This is people, which is much harder to pull off. And throughout the entire movie, I was just constantly in awe of how good it looked. It just looked so breathtakingly spectacular that, it was nothing short of incredible. I really, really liked I really, really enjoyed the movie. I watched it with a smile on my face. And yeah, thumbs up.
Yeah, mark 5 minutes down for the first incredible reference. Okay. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was, I guess I'm slightly more towards the Alex side, although I'm definitely on Incredibles 1 over 2. But I thought it was great. It was gorgeous. The action sequences were incredible. I can't say that. The action sequence was really great. The action side of the plot I thought was very good. I'll have some, I don't love some parts of the direction it went in. The domestic stuff was very good. I thought all the characters were really sympathetic. It's definitely like a satisfying follow up, even though I guess I don't think like the scale is there compared to the first movie.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily feel the stakes, as much, which is, I guess, sort of my main issues, but I thought it was really, really great. I really want to get into a lot of spoiler stuff, but it's really great overall. I guess another thing is I thought the dialogue basically throughout the movie felt very general, and almost no sections of dialogue stood out to me as particularly good.
Yeah, I agree with that very strongly. They could have done something really interesting given the type of word choices they were using, but it just all kind of felt very empty to me.
I really wish the script was slightly more tuned. Yeah.
There's one segment with Elastigirl that stood out to me, but like more in terms of tone rather than I guess the words she's saying. But we'll get to that, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. It's just that was my only thing that I was like, oh, this is. I mean, it's interesting because this movie is predicated on it being these tropey characters that are based off of the family roles in a nuclear family. So like the characters themselves are supposed to be like stereotypes. So building a sequel is its own type of thing off of like these not fleshed out things. So like I kind of understand the difficulties that would go into the story in this. But anyway, we can get into this more, and let's get into spoilers now. We have to discuss villain stuff, all that. There's twists, so make sure you don't keep listening if you haven't seen the movie. So spoilers for Incredibles 2. Starting now. So I guess the main thing to talk about would be the villain with Evelyn, and what we thought, how that was handled in the movie. Beatriz, were you surprised by?
No. No, I wasn't.
Alex, were you surprised?
Honestly, yes. Although I think I was influenced in part by hearing that the Bob Odenkirk character was going to be the villain in the lead up. So like up to like about halfway, I was still like, okay, he's the puppet master around this somehow. Like not till the scene where they go into the dark building is where you start thinking, well, I think that there's a scene where they show him watching the screens, and like there's where I began to doubt. But yeah, I've seen people say that they noticed it from the beginning. Maybe I'm just slow with these twists, but I didn't catch it until pretty late in the movie.
Why not surprised, Beatriz?
I mean, they were just very heavy-handed with it, and every scene that Evelyn was in, and especially with her and her brother, even just in terms of like the lighting of the frame, he was always shown in the light, and she was always shown in the shadows in the dark. And, it was just like at one point they go through like the whole Batman origin within the movie. Like there's the whole Martha, like the death of the family sequence. And I was like, okay, are they going to do it with him? But then I feel like he was the obvious choice, right? He was the one who was like, of course it's going to be like, he's going to be the bad guy. He's going to be the villain. But then I thought that, I don't know. For me, it was just very clear from the beginning that of course she's going to be the one that goes bad. Why? I don't know. I think maybe I didn't call on her motivations. I thought she was actually good. I thought it was going to be a lot more maybe like feminist in a way, especially after Cars 3. I was expecting much more overtly feminist takes because, I thought it was going to be like, okay, like he's taking control of everything and I'm not getting none of the credit and I'm doing all the work and I can't be in the front or whatever. Maybe that, and then it could have tied in well with like the whole working mom kind of thing with Elastigirl. Like I was expecting kind of that. That's not what happened. It was much more simpler. But in terms of like the twist, no, I called it very quickly because of just simply the way everything was framed. It was very easy for me to catch.
I'm going to ignore that that response contained the phrase, especially after Cars 3. Well, let's not get back up.
Dude, don't underestimate Cars 3. Like, I hated it until, like, the final act, and I was like,
okay,
oh,
okay, we're not getting into that. Yeah, I thought it was the Bob Odenkirk character, right? Like, I think that's the obvious where they're going with it. It's like when you meet the two of them, it's like, okay, there's something bad's happening with them. Like, in that regard, I feel like Incredibles 1 didn't have that with with the sidekick. It's not like, oh, he's gonna come back later in the movie and be evil. Like, I didn't feel like, but when I initially met these characters, like, okay, they're bad in some form. I did think it was gonna be him. So when it turned out to be just be her, like, even when it was like, oh, she's bad, like when she gets the glasses or the slapped over the goggles, I thought it's like it's both of them. Like, that's where I thought it was going. So I am surprised it was just Evelyn. But I like the concept of it just being her. I think it's like subversive, like having like an awesome female villain is like a great call here, especially in an Elastigirl centered movie. I thought that her presence and her being like the tech behind everything, I thought all that's great. I'm underwhelmed by like her motivations and the scale of what she was trying to do. Like, I think that like really held the third act back for me because she never seemed like the threat to me. Like, where is she escaping to at the end? Like she's directing a boat at the city. Okay. Like what could go wrong here? I didn't really understand.
Can we also talk since we're talking about like stakes, I feel like a big problem with this movie is that they don't really show I guess the governmental presence, like the politicians who are causing this kind of oppression of like superheroes and all that. I didn't really feel that in this movie. And I feel like if we had actually put a face to it instead of just there was just a lot of kind of very overtly, they were like, oh, it's, the politicians are bad and blah and this and that. And it's like, well, show us like them actually showing. And the ambassador doesn't count because ambassadors are just representatives. They're not the actual lawmakers. So I'm just like, come on, show us like the people that you're criticizing, and then maybe give us like a sense of like, I never felt this sense of like, how is this negative? Like, how, beyond Bob wanting to wear his suit again, are they feeling the oppression of being hidden? I don't know. I just felt like I needed more, like you said, I needed more stakes and more of a, I don't know, I just felt it was very closed.
Yeah, I think it was very derivative of the first movie, like the setup that they presented there.
That's the thing. I think they were very dependent on you having watched the first movie, because I do think that first movie does implant very well, especially in the intro sequence that we've gushed about before, like how the process went of like the government slowly turning on the supers and then the supers going into exile. Like they go through all that with you. But in the second movie, they kind of assume that you remember that information, but maybe that's the wrong assumption to make. Well, I do remember
because again, we did the first Incredibles podcast like just a couple weeks ago, so I do remember it. I think for me, it's more of like part of the argument is like, what about our kids? Like, how are they going to deal with this? And before it was very much like, how does an adult transition from being one thing to being another? For me, it was like, well, you could have shown like how hard is it for a kid in high school to be different and whatever. I mean, they could have shown a different way of showing this oppression and why the adults have to take charge to change it for the sake of the future. Yeah, there were ways where they could have actually amped up the stakes in this movie, because if we're just going to keep treading the same argument again, which is, okay, we gotta fix these people, we gotta liberate these people and make superheroes a thing again. It can't just be, oh, we're only going to show this one side of them trying desperately to fix it. We're not going to show the people who are working against them. You know what I mean? I feel like there's just this emptiness in the story.
Yeah. It's definitely notable that we never really see the anti-superhero side, apart from like the police in the beginning. And a lot of movies cut to like the bad politicians and stuff like that, and we really just get the pro superhero side. So that's why it's kind of like surprising to see Evelyn so anti-hero at the end. And I also just kind of wasn't it seemed like a lot of her motivations were based on the parents' origin story that we mentioned. And it's like, okay, I get that, but like what else?
Also, like in her screenslaver persona, she also like goes to this whole monologue of like everyone is only interested in superheroes because of simulation, and all you want to do is live through your screens, which is admittedly a little anachronistic with the setting that we're in, because like this is kind of like the 60s. I'm not sure if we got to that point yet, but like. but like that side of stuff never really connects with her normal human motivations that we get in the final scenes. So like that's also a little weird. Like I don't know if that's part of her motivation or if that was just a misdirect as part of the persona. But like that scene stood out a little bit. Like is this an explanation or just something to play up the villain status?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I felt like that was definitely unexplored. I was like, all right, if you're just going to ignore that this is set in the 60s and actually give us like some sort of like critique on like social media. Like I was expecting like Elastigirl, then the family to become like the Kardashians or something, like, and just be too over like exposed and not like it or something. I don't know. I was like expecting something if they were going to show it, because I was like, okay, there's so many things that are modern that have modern day equivalents, and then they just kind of did that for the sake of for nothing, for just leaving it unexplored, I guess.
Yeah, maybe it'll require another viewing and diving deeper, but I don't see any big themes popping out to me right now, honestly. Maybe not super thematically resonant, one of the weaker points, but that's something that's kind of hard to delve into immediately in reactions. Anyway, Evelyn is a villain, to, I guess, close this discussion on her out. I thought that she was, I guess, fun, interesting overall, but not a lot to her. Would be my takeaway. Alex, what do you think of her?
Yeah, they try to do the job of developing her character through these conversations with Elastigirl, especially in that party scene where they like have that whole discussion about like the difference between selling and creating and things like that. So I think they do a good enough job of like fleshing her out as a person, but like as a villain, it's like a separate thing, right? It's like actually giving her motivations for doing evil things. But I think like the dialogue they give her before they make the twist that is decent enough to carry those scenes. In that party where like they're on the couch and they're just like talking about like they're just having a normal conversation. Like I enjoyed that scene very much. But like then once we do the twist to her being a villain and she's explaining why she hates superheroes and all, like that's where her character kind of falls off. But I think before that point, like she is interesting. Like she's an ironic person, like the pessimism as a counterpoint to Bob Odenkirk's optimism. So like that dynamic I think was interesting to watch.
Yeah, I like that take. I do think she was definitely interesting, and I even after the villain turn, but it didn't necessarily I don't know, maybe come together. In terms of the twist, I will say one thing I want to mention was the scene where it happens of like she's like the mask and she like uncovers the goggles from under it. She's like, oh, you can have the screen both ways, and then Evelyn like puts the goggles onto her. I thought that was incredible, that sequence. I thought that was really well done, and it was like really tense, and like even though you're expecting something evil to happen with the two of them, I wasn't expecting that with her in that exact moment, and also just like the two-way screen type of thing that really worked for me. I thought that scene was great. So the concept of the screenslaver, a lot of this movie, especially the third act, revolves around kind of mind control, and I'm said this a lot on the podcast. I'm really not a fan of mind control plots. I think taking away agency from characters we care about just isn't like pleasant to watch. So like there's a portion of the movie when, you know, Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, Frozen, they're all screen slavered, and that wasn't great, but I think luckily it did not last, or like I think on purpose it did not last very long, and I was very happy when, you know, the kids come on and they take them off. It seemed like, oh, that was quicker than expected that we free them from that. But I guess another side of the mind control element is that there are these awesome new supers characters, and it turns out they're just a vehicle to be mind controlled as villains, which I mean, certainly those aren't characters with much of any depth to them.
No, they're pretty goofy. Like Void is the one who kind of stands out. Like her first scene where she's kind of like very awkward around her. Like I like that part. But like the rest is like they're kind of just pieces on the chessboard. They don't really serve much of a enjoyment past that.
Exactly,
they're henchmen. They're henchmen. That's what they are, essentially.
Yeah, you walk away from the movie with except for potentially Void, where they're just like, okay, these were literally characters meant to be in the third act as like obstacles. So I don't know if that works fully, although I thought they were really cool, and you know, like the Crusher guy is a funny moment at the end. You know, like they all have kind of interesting stuff. Void, I think, definitely stands out. I think her portals were really interestingly used in all the fight sequences, and she's
the ending sequence where she's trying to get Elastigirl up to the plane, like that sequence is pretty funny, admittedly.
Yeah, she's trying to get her up, and then also like when she's falling, and she's like, use the parachute so then I can portal you, and then you can fall at like a different angle, like even though you're about to hit the ground, like you pull up. That was like awesome. Like I think that all the way they used the Void portals was excellent. Also I love Void at the end talking to Violet. That stood out. Yeah. Best friends. But then it was like, are they the same age? But then immediately cut to boy stuff with Violet again. It's like, sigh. Anyway, okay, so let's pivot to Elastigirl as the lead, because I don't know if we've got into that enough. I think we all thought that worked to enough of an extent. I like the movie's explanation that she's like the least destructive one. Beatrice, do you think she carried like kind of the A part of the movie?
I think that it's always great to see her, and I always love, especially with, they know how to creatively use their superpowers, especially hers. There's that, that sequence with the train, which is just basically going crazy using her superpowers. Like they're like, let's see how creative we can get with this. And it was so entertaining, and I love watching that. And I think it was great. My biggest thing is that I felt that her storyline, the main plot with her, felt a little disconnected from Bob and the family storyline. I just felt like, again, I don't want to, I'm going to compare because it's hard not to. But in the first Incredibles, it was just so, even though both stories were happening in separately, you could hear echoes of each other within each other's storylines, and they just were threaded very well together. In this one, I felt like the stories didn't really match up well. They were just they were kind of like a V, two angles going until at the end they meet. It wasn't so much of a thread. So I think she was definitely great, and she's probably the most interesting part. I just felt like they could have done more.
Yeah, it's in Incredibles 1. We get to a point very quickly where it's Elastigirl and the kids going like trying to save Mr. Incredible. So like we integrate the him and the kids and her.
Not that quickly though. It's not that quickly. They take
that happens
time.
Near the end of that movie.
Yeah, that's like when they that's second half of the movie. They spend the first half of the movie pretty apart and
it's
building
like
this stuff.
It's like the halfway point. I would say in this movie, I think it's like, we don't get to that point until 5, 6th or whatever. But, I agree that at least, okay, just focusing on this one to avoid the comparisons. Yeah, it's like there's the family scenes, and then we have a lot of cuts too. We have the twist, and she gets, the goggles put on her, and then we just cut back to family stuff. Like, that felt, pretty noticeable to me that we just, they did seem a little despair. What do you think, Alex?
Well, I think that the thread they were trying to connect each one was the whole gender roles thing, of like what am I supposed to do in this role of the family? Because we begin with Bob being like, I have to be the one to do this stuff, and like we frame it as, because I'm a superhero, like I need to show off. But like it also comes off as like I'm the man. That's kind of my thing.
Oh, that's how I read it. I didn't read it as, I'm a superhero. I read it as, I'm the man of the family. I have to be the one to do it.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the easier ways to interpret that. And like throughout, and then we get to Helen being like, I can do this on my own. It's fine. Let me do it. And Bob is showing resentment throughout the entire movie on that front, while trying to fill Helen's more traditional role in the family. And in the meantime, while Helen is doing her things, we also have some conversation with Evelyn about like, this is your chance to be in the spotlight finally. Like this is your chance to stand out without being in Bob's shadow. So like I think that's the thread that was trying to be connected between them. But I agree that like if you think that that's the main thread, by the end it kind of gets hidden away and like dealing with the villain, and the villain, since her motivations are not related to that at all, we don't really get a tie up in that front, except for just Bob and Helen being proud of each other and proud of their children. But that doesn't really relate to how we began the movie per se. So like I think it was doing a good job of paralleling the storylines. I think that they were actually doing that pretty well. But by the third act, it kind of got thrown by the wayside to focus on all of these action sequences.
Yeah, I like that take too. I think that's definitely what they're going for with that sort of parallel. And even if they don't, like it directly tie into each other, maybe like thematically tie in like that. But yeah, I agree that the villain maybe doesn't relate to any of that at all. Thinking about all this, I really think of Incredibles 1 as kind of like a narratively perfect movie. Like you just watch it and it's just seamless and it's like everything's clicking. Like there's not necessarily a ton of character depth or whatever, but it's just start to finish. And I think this movie, I feel like the strengths are the animation, the action sequences. And I think maybe the narrative is one of the weaker parts, which is interesting.
It's a superhero movie.
Yeah.
So was the first one, but
I know, but this one's the superhero movie of today. It's a superhero movie of this new era of superhero movies, which is narrative wise may not be great, but the action sequences visually, it's great.
Yeah, I think the first movie I think of more of as a spy movie than a superhero movie. I think that's especially the second half sequences what we're going for more. This movie, I don't know. It's I think it's still kind of a genre thriller, maybe more so than a superhero movie, but because that's always kind of the shtick of Incredibles.
Also I think that both the Incredibles 1 and Incredibles 2 are family movies as well, where we're dealing with a family dynamic. I think in the first movie, it does a better job of keeping that in the focus throughout the movie. Whereas in this movie, I think it does pretty well, especially with the Bob scenes, incorporating the whole family dynamic stuff. But when we get to the superhero stuff, because we're involving Frozone and all these extra heroes into the midst, it's there are brief moments of interaction between them, and the moment where Bob is I'm proud of you, Violet, for making the right decision in the whole ship redirecting scene. But you get those bits and pieces, but I think it just gets lost in the fight in a way that it didn't. It was incorporated very well into the final fight of the first movie.
I'm gonna, after hearing what you just said, I think I'm gonna take back what I said about Elastigirl. I don't think that she did a good job in carrying the main plot of the movie. Because the most interesting stuff was the family stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's the more interesting character stuff. Right?
No, totally. No, but Elastigirl's super interesting though. And the thing is even when, for instance, when Bob was away on the island, it was clearly this is a theme of midlife crisis and all that. Whereas with her, it was just purely adventure and fun. There wasn't a lot of character study. So I'm gonna flip over and say that go on the other side. Despite the fact that I love Elastigirl, I don't think that part of the story was strong at all.
I think that it was thrilling. It was great action wise, and we focused on the good parts of that. I think she carried it. She's an interesting character. None of these characters have enough depth that they can just carry an A plot on their own, like they're asking Elastigirl to do. So I understand that take. Her character doesn't have a ton of depth there, so there wasn't. It wasn't it was that characterization wise that interesting, but I still thought her stuff in the A was really good. But yeah, let's talk about Mr. Incredible and the B, because that was a lot of time spent in the movie was at their new house. Jack Jack is going nuts. 30% of this movie, maybe higher. What do we think of Jack Jack?
Better than what I expected, honestly. I had low expectations. That I was worried that he was gonna dominate the plot, but I actually think that they gave him enough time. That they focused the other characters around him, so including the other characters instead of just. They had the one Jack Jack scene with the raccoon, and you have your old Looney Tunes sequence for
really
5 minutes.
Long. Oh
you have that for 5 minutes, but everywhere else, Jack Jack is surrounded by other characters. It's Violet and Dash trying to wrangle him in. It's Mr. Incredible trying to wrangle him in, and he gets involved in the final fight scene. So I think overall they do a good job of including Jack Jack with other characters to balance, make him not annoying on his own. Also, the Edna Mode scene is just incredible. I love Edna Mode still, and her reaction to Jack Jack is just perfect.
Yeah, and so yeah, we can talk Edna now. So because then when Mr. Incredible comes back and Jack Jack is imitating her, yeah, that's one of the best scenes of the movie, I think. That's like Jack Jack is super sympathetic and he's funny and his sequences are like really gorgeously animated and stuff like that. I can't help but feel that the Jack Jack versus raccoon scene, which felt like 15 minutes, was I don't know if it was, but like
it was like 5 minutes. It wasn't that bad.
God, I can't help but feel like that is beneath the movie. You know, like that felt like I was watching Minions, not Incredibles. Anyway. Yeah. Beatrice, Jack Jack.
Here's an idea. What if they had made that sequence with Jack Jack and the raccoon a short? Why not make that?
It felt like a short, yeah.
There have been Jack Jack shorts before after the first Incredible movie.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. I'm just like, why couldn't they do it again? If anything, why couldn't they have opened the? I don't know. I just feel like that could have been a perfect short, and in and of itself as a standalone. And in terms of quality, in terms of the tone of the movie, like that would have worked really well on its own. I just feel like if you mentioned that he's like 30% of the movie, had he been dialed down to 20%, then it would have been perfect. But because he took up so much time, it's kind of, I don't know. I just feel like there comes a point in the movie where it does drag. And I feel like maybe if they didn't overdo the jokes with Jack Jack, then maybe it would have been it wouldn't have dragged as much. I don't know. I just think that there's only, I guess, I don't know. They just kept giving him new powers. They didn't stay with the ones we were introduced to in the first one. They just kept adding more and more to him, and he kind of became like a Deus Ex Machina for like a moment, where like any random thing that they needed a solution for, oh, let's just give it to Jack Jack. He has this new power now. That's the joke. He has all these powers. He's super powerful. I don't know. I just felt like I don't know. I just think that they over-relied on him, and they not only over-relied, but overestimated how much of him we wanted. Like, so many people obsessed over Jack Jack, but I never understood that. I'm like, he's a baby. There's only so much depth you can give a baby because he's still forming himself. Like, there's only so much you can do.
I think a lot of people are going to love the Jack Jack.
Yeah, there's definitely an audience for this. Like,
loved it.
Yeah, that scene got the biggest laughs in my theater, honestly.
Well, like for me, as like more of someone who cares about quality, I'm just, I would rather him be not to say take him out completely.
More care about the other parts, like the more serious parts. I think for Jack Jack, even though like every time he was in the movie, it really did work. I don't think for me, it didn't necessarily drag. Like, I think even the raccoon scene I enjoyed. It's just, it amounts to like he was in such a significant part that I felt like, maybe he could have done more with other characters. I don't know. It comes across like he's too much of a mascot, like it's a typical Disney animated movie with like the mascot character. And that's the Jack Jack in this movie. Even though his powers were great, it was all really well animated. It's very, at times extremely funny, especially the Edna stuff. So, I still think it's like a positive, but that's a potential criticism. The rest of the family, scenes, we have, Dash with the math homework and Mr. Incredible. What do you think about the math stuff? That was also a lot of the movie.
I want to at least highlight the scene where like he's trying to help him do math. They fail, but like then he's like going to bed. He's like grumbling to himself. It's quiet in the house. He's like rumbling around in bed. He stares at the clock. He gets up because he still has that in his mind, and like goes downstairs and like picks up the textbook. It's like, how hard can it be? Like that little scene, it reminded me of a similar scene in the first movie where like we just like see him do his office stuff. In a movie that's full of comedy and action, like it still takes this time to like be quiet and like just show this character going through an internal struggle. And so like I just really appreciated that scene in particular because it kind of stood out in the rest of the noise of the rest of this movie.
I would argue they didn't stay quiet enough. I would say that was one of the few like kind of gems of the quietness that kind of echoes the first movie. And I don't think it was there that long, to be honest. It was the scene from the trailer, and then it was the scene of him learning it and then teaching him. I don't think it was that present of a thing. If anything, it's kind of like Dash was brought down to like a 5% of the movie, and then Jack kind of took over his part.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then,
I mean, Dash is definitely the least utilized of the kids.
Not like whatever. But point is, like, I don't know if it was like that. I didn't feel the math to be that present.
It just came back like over time. I think a few times in the movie, but it definitely not to the scale of the Jack usage. I agree with Alex earlier that Dash was a lot more sympathetic here. I thought his reactions to a lot of stuff were great. So I thought Dash was thumbs up, and I like all of his interactions with Bob. I thought that was great. Some great father-son stuff there. Let's talk Violet. Increased usage for Violet, I think, in this movie. One of my favorite things with Violet is the action, like forward force use of her force field. She can like throw it like that. It happens immediately. I'm like, this is immediately after the last movie. But yeah, she's actively uses her force field as like an attack, and I think that's really cool.
Oh, also, is she the only one in this movie who manages to resist getting the glasses put on her? Like everybody else gets taken by surprise. Like she's the only one who manages to knock them off before they put it on her.
Yeah, well, none of the kids get them on, but yeah, but she's the scene where she fights it off. Yeah, so I guess she's the best of them, right? She's
clearly.
Yeah, Beatrice, satisfied with the amount of Violet in this movie?
Of course, I'm always a fan of Violet. And I don't know, I really appreciate the humor. I mean, for instance, like what comes to mind for me is after, like, when she's crying and she grabs a tub of ice cream, but she's like, her face is invisible because she doesn't want anyone to see her cry. And that, to me, like, I don't know, I just think that they used her very well in terms of the comedy and the teen angst and all that. And I don't know, I'm a really big fan. I'm kind of like, again, my bias is showing, but like, why is Tony so great? I don't know. Convince me. But no, yeah. But her stuff was great. Her stuff was the tone of the humor in her was much more of like the family hijinks that we had come to love in the first one. So obviously her stuff I definitely really enjoyed.
Well, see, the thing with Tony is he's zero depth. He's just the token boyfriend character for the Violet character. He's like used as a framing device in the beginning and the end of the movie. Like, I think it's a nice subversion of like gender subversion there. But I agree. Why is he so great? Alex, Violet thoughts?
Yes, I also agree that she deserves better than Tony, so she should move on.
Tony's perfectly wait, hold on. Tony comes across very well here. He doesn't forget on purpose. He seems perfectly fine.
I don't mind Tony. I don't think he's the problem.
I do mind Tony.
Okay, well,
he doesn't deserve Violet.
Look, all I'm saying is, like, yay for subversion of things, but I'm more of a fan of give me well-developed characters and give me reasons to like characters, not just don't subvert for the sake of subverting. You know what I mean? I'm more of like, tell me why Tony's like great.
Yeah. Anyway, Alex, highlights of Violet here.
I did definitely enjoy the scene of her going nuts upon learning that Tony had been brainwiped, like trying to throw the suit into the trash dispenser, like throwing it into the wall and stuff. So she played that very well. I think she's used properly in the action sequences. There's also the scene where Bob is apologizing to Violet for all that, and like Violet is like, I think that little scene also was pretty good. Just that them bonding and like him falling asleep while Violet is hugging him, like just, it warms my heart. But yeah, Violet was very good in the first movie, and she's still very good in the second movie. I always appreciated when she was on screen.
Yeah, I think she's much more utilized in the second movie. I think the first movie, she's like a favorite, even though she doesn't have a ton to do. A lot of it's just spent trying to make the force field. And here she is more of a focal point. And
although I think her arc is a little stronger in the first movie, because like there, it's her coming to terms with like not having used her powers and then being asked to use them in a strong situation. Here, like, because it's framed around this like bad boyfriend thing, it's like, I don't want to be a hero anymore. It comes with problems. And then, okay, well, we have to be here to help people. Like, it felt a little bit more superficial than the arc she had in the first movie. I still think it did it well, but I think that there was a little more depth to her character growth in the first movie as opposed to here.
Yeah, she had like a firm linear arc, that personal arc in the first movie, and here she's a little bit all over the place and none of it. Yeah, but you still regret. I think it's at the expense the expense of the arc. She has more to do in a lot of different places.
Yeah, I think it's important also to note that it's like because this is something that for me I had to remind myself this when we first see Violet, because it's so brief in the first movie, but it says like 3 months later. So in the beginning when we first see her in this one, I was like, oh my gosh, she's like a different character. She's like completely a different character. We've completely ignored the first movie. But then I had to remind myself it's been 3 months since the first one.
Yeah,
a lot happens.
It's right after the epilogue, but the epilogue in the first one is 3 months after the rest.
And that's why she had the confidence to ask Tony out in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah, so she's more confident.
Well,
much like in the last
Tony
scene.
asked her out, so let's get that straight.
Well, yeah, with because she asserted herself, and yeah, exactly. Okay, and we talked a lot about Bob in relation to other characters, but I thought he was well used in the family stuff throughout here.
Yeah. I wanted a little bit more exploration of that comment he made of why does he have to be the one to do it? Because they kind of do that. They have that conversation in the beginning with Helen and him, where she goes, maybe it's my turn. Maybe I'll be the one to go into the private sector and whatever. This is before all the superhero stuff. So I wanted more exploration of that. But beside that, like his like family stuff and him kind of like being like present in his kids' lives and stuff, that's always lovely to see.
Yeah, I agree that argument of like him not liking that it's her turn to go up, and that comes across a little bit superficially. Like they reconcile and they play it as last, but yeah, I thought he comes across like I think increasingly sympathetic as these family scenes go on, and I think that
he gets the most emotional moments. He gets all the quiet moments. Elastic Girl didn't really get any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she gets to be the action hero, so that's cool. That's cool too. Yeah.
Well, in the last one, in the previous one, everyone got a little bit of both. So it's kind of like in this one, it's much more, divided. What goes? And I mean,
in theory, the structure of the first one's similar with he goes off and then they're left. But off, yeah, I do think the first one, it like we talked about before, it transitions faster to the second half. But as we've talked about throughout this, I think that these action sequences throughout, I think, were really incredible, and it's like just all the ways we use the various powers. I mentioned like the void portals and Jack's powers get utilized. It's just that's like to me is the thing I'm going to remember most, like the animation and these action pieces and how all the characters utilized in them.
Yeah, I completely agree.
All right, last character, Frozone. He didn't have a lot to do.
No, he didn't.
Although he doesn't have that much in the first movie either. Yeah, but like, I think he's a good spice that they sprinkle throughout this movie. I enjoy his scene where he shows up to the house. It's like, wait, what is going on? You have a freaky baby.
His face is when they nailed his face after he after the what the and the what the F, and like, how they cut off at the end, and then it's just him and Bob in the on the couch, and his face of just pure horror and shock and astonishment over Jack. It's just, they nailed that.
Yeah, he's still entertaining the small parts. I was shocked that they restrained themselves to one scene of his off-screen wife in this movie. Like, that was such a meme after the first the super suit of the first one, and there's one small scene with the ASAP with her.
And Honey only got like one line. Like, it wasn't even as extended as the first movie.
Yeah, I almost wanted more. I was worried it was going to be way too much because, like, I don't know, maybe that's just in our corner that's such a meme, but there's a very, very. I would like to see a little bit more.
Am I the only one who's disappointed that we don't actually get to see Honey? I feel like that's kind of a missed opportunity.
It's like what the gag is, but at the same time, it would have been like you can use the sequel as an opportunity to flesh out the initial gag.
Yeah, and not just that, but I feel like, I don't know. It just says, I don't know. I just felt a little uncomfortable in like, why is she always like. In the portrayal of her, she's always off screen. You never get to see her face. She's barely developed. It's like she's only been used as a joke. And I don't know. I felt like that might rub people the wrong way.
Yeah, to me, it comes across worse in the first movie. In this movie, with Elastigirl as the lead and a female villain, I think it's forgivable. But yeah,
I've kind of accepted her status as a joke character, so I think it is funnier to keep her off screen. Honestly,
I think that's their thinking, is like that's the joke, So, but yeah, I mean, I agree. Like it's kind of an inherently sexist based gag, but it's based off of this nuclear family's expectations, and so I don't know. Same thing with them as the family and their characters. Anyway.
But by the way, there's an offhand detail thrown in by Frozen. They're like, the offer's open. You can come live with me anytime.
Yeah.
Why haven't they done this at some point?
That's the third movie, them living with Frozone, right? That'd be great. Then we
look where he lives. He lives in the middle of the city in a skyscraper on like the 10th floor with giant glass windows. How have you rejected this offer?
Yeah, I mean, but we all know like Frozone is like breathing a sigh of relief after realizing that Jack has all these powers. He's like, I don't know if I want this baby in my fancy apartment.
Yeah.
Afterwards, sure, but they should have taken advantage of his goodwill before he figured it out.
Yeah, well, they got the big house anyway. Oh, we'd like Jack with the couches and the water and the controller, or not Jack Dash with that. That
was a good introduction to the house scene, and also it kind of felt like they were just showing off. Hey, we can do water.
Yeah, a lot of good animation show scenes. Okay, we long for a reactions podcast, so let's close out here. Beatrice, final thoughts on Incredibles 2.
Really entertaining and enjoyable movie. It's gotten nothing on the first one.
Increasingly strong take going throughout with that. Okay, Alex, counterpoint, final thoughts.
I eat thunder and crap lightning.
Elaborate.
Well, that was a very good line uttered by Bob during his going insane scene, explaining why he's failing at everything to Dash and Violet. So I enjoyed that line. It was a very good delivery. But as for Incredibles 2, I think it's a great comedy. It's a great action movie. If you're looking for the same story quality as Incredibles 1, then yes, I'm going to agree that it's lacking there. But I think the goals it's going for are executed well, and I still enjoy it. I think after talking this through, I'm going to back off and say Incredibles 2 it has a chance to be better than Incredibles 1. But I still think it's a very good movie. Even on the Pixar level, like I think it can stand up against a lot of the great Pixar movies just because of how well it does the things it's focusing on in terms of its animation, in terms of its action. And I think there are a lot of good lines in here that from all characters. Holly Hunter, I don't think we've talked about her enough. Her voice work is incredible. I especially enjoy her being very excited during the phone call to Bob and like squealing with excitement. It's awesome. And also, we haven't really talked about the short before the movie. Do we want to give that a quick mention? I just want to say I really like that.
Yeah, you can say good, thumbs up. But we can get into it maybe in the recap. Beatrice can. But
okay. All I'll say is that I felt very weird when the moment where the child was swallowed. I felt very sad, and the theater was howling with laughter. I was very annoyed by that because that was
same exact experience. Yep.
Yeah, it's a very emotional experience. Like everybody's like ha ha ha, like no, like this.
And then it gets sad for the next minute and they're still laughing. It's like, oh my god. Yeah,
no, mine was like pin drop. You could hear a pin drop. We were all like, this got very dark.
Beatrice had a more sophisticated audience. Okay.
Yeah, because also like when the short ends, I like heard people saying like, I hate these shorts, and finally the Incredibles. Oh, like people respect the shorts before the movie. And this was actually a good Pixar shorts for like. I realized we've had a kind of a low point with Pixar shorts recently, but this was really good. And just as a person who's been a child of very protective parents in the past, I related very much to this short, and yeah, so Bao was incredible. It definitely got me in the emotional tone you need to appreciate Incredibles 2.
And female director. It was directed by a female. Just needed to throw that out there.
Emotional tone for okay.
It got you into the whole family.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in future podcasts. Top 10 Pixar movie, Alex. Yes or no? Incredibles 2.
Yes.
Okay,
I don't have a ranking, but it's got to be in the top 10 somewhere.
Yeah, for me, it's somewhere in that 6 to 14 range. But I really just wish there was more narrative and thematic depth. But regardless, I thought it was fantastic. So I'm satisfied. I thought it was a great follow up. I don't think this is like we've waited 10 years. We finally found the exact right story, and now we're gonna make the sequel. We held out. Like, that doesn't ring true to me based off of seeing the movie. It's like, this could have been anything, you know. I feel like the story is largely just a vehicle for exploring these characters in this world more. But yeah, very big thumbs up. Very happy with Incredibles 2, and let us know what you thought of the movie. What were your initial reactions? Let us know in the comments on the website, on YouTube comments, or anywhere. Check out overlyanimated.com and see where you can give feedback. Make sure to subscribe to Miss Beatrice's recap podcast coming up. We also have other animation coverage, a lot going on this weekend with Voltron, Legendary Defender Season 6 coverage coming up at overlyanimated.com. Make sure you tune in for that. And come chat with us on Discord, overlyanimated.com/Discord, and support us via Patreon, patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thank you very much to all of our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Katrin, aka Patron Katrin. And thanks as always to our patron executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, Andy, and Hugh. Yeah, a bunch of stuff coming up on overlyanimated.com. Very busy weekend, so check all that out there. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next time. Bye.
Adios.
Bye.